there, this is Dion Bickham reporting from Comic-Con 2022 San Diego for CBR, and I'm here today with one of the creators of Flashpoint Beyond, Tim Sheridan. How are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Dion. How you doing?
I am doing absolutely wonderful. Now that I get to sit here and talk to you.
It's Comic-Con, right? It's so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am loving this Flashpoint Beyond series that you're doing now, but I have to ask, how does this advance the story of the original Flashpoint?
Well, I mean, it is, I guess the official sequel to Flashpoint, and it is. In many ways, I think a lot of people came into it thinking, well, are we just revisiting something that we've already experienced? And, for us, the idea was, well, of course, we're going to go back there. But the reason is because there is something else to tell. There's more to the story to tell. If you look at the original Flashpoint, and this is something that Jeff Johns and Jeremy Adams, co-creators, and I talked about in the beginning, it's very much focused on the past. What can we change about the past to affect the present, to affect our world? And we just started talking about, well, what happens next? What is the future like? What does it mean? If Flashpoint is a rumination on the idea of grief and how we manage and how we deal with grief from our past, what does it mean to then move beyond that? And that's kind of where the title came from for us. And how do we move into the future? And what does the future hold for a group of characters and an environment and a world that I think a lot of us just fell in love with and are very happy to sort of, play around in a little bit more. I mean, these are like the greatest toys in the world to get to play with. It's like, let's put them together and see what happens.
So what do you feel is the major theme then of Flashpoint Beyond?
I mean, it very much along the lines of the original Flashpoint. It is about grief and trauma and how we deal with it. But as I was saying, the difference, I think, is that what Flashpoint Beyond explores is how we look to the future, how we rise above it, how we move beyond it. Now, you've seen in the story so far, Thomas Wayne, who is very much still rooted in the past and changing these events that he now knows after his experience with Barry that this is all wrong, that none of this really matters because this isn't the way it's supposed to be. But that's him looking backwards, right? What we're going to see now, and we started to see in issue 3 with Superman, is the idea that there is hope for this world as it is now, and that everything does matter and can matter. The question is, will Thomas come to realize that and deal with that? And he's kind of a wild card, so it's up for grabs. But yeah, moving beyond the trauma and the grief that can the mix of tragedy and triumph that makes a hero. That's what makes Bruce Wayne Batman. That's what made Thomas Wayne Batman. And I think that's all of those that mix, that great soup of stuff that made them the men they are. All that trauma. How do they move beyond it? How do they look to the future and then live in that hope? I think the thing that people don't talk about a lot with Batman is how hopeful he is. And that's whether you're talking about Bruce or whether you're talking about Thomas. I think that you have to have a certain amount of hope if you're going to put on that costume and go out in the streets and make a difference. And we like to think of him as this dark, brooding figure. Again, either Bruce or Thomas. But no, there's such great capacity for hope and love in those men who have been through so much trauma. How do they tap into the hope? How do they move beyond the trauma and the grief? That's true for all of the characters in the story. Also, who the heck is the Clockwork Killer, and why is that happening? You're going to find out in issue 4. Actually, you're going to find out who the Clockwork Killer is.
All right. Well, speaking of issue 4, issue 3 left us with a huge tease about Flashpoint Robin. And you know I was going to ask you about that. What can you tell us about Flashpoint Robin?
Look, man, you knew we were going there, right?
Yeah.
Come on. Like, I mean, we introduced this young boy who has, talk about trauma and grief, who has been through it with his sister, with his father, with his mother. And he's living in Wayne Manor. We've seen this sort of story play out before, right? So you knew we were going to get to explore what does it mean for Dexter Dent to be a Robin, to be a Robin figure at least. So he's been building up to it. You saw right from the beginning. I mean, that kid's up to something. He's got designs. He knows what's happening. He says, first thing, he's like, I want to learn about explosives. I want to learn how to shoot a gun, which is very much, in keeping with Thomas's Batman. This Flashpoint world is more raw, and so you're going to see a Robin who is more raw and more reflective of Thomas Wayne's world. But that's why you saw the tease as Robin the Boy Terror. Not exactly, it's a wonder why he's such a terror. But one of the things that we've talked about in the room, and the way we do this, by the way, is a lot like in television. And Jeff and Jeremy and I, all have come from television, have worked in television. And we all get in a room, the three of us get in a room together, and we break the story together. We talk about what it's going to be, and then we break out kind of how it's going to work on the pages. And then we all go off and write, and then we, sort of pool all that stuff together and go through the process with the incredible artists that we're working with. But one of the things that we talked about early on was if Thomas Wayne had, if Bruce Wayne had lived, young Bruce, in Park Row that night, and if Thomas Wayne had still become Batman for some reason, would Bruce have become Robin? And I think that was kind of when we started thinking about that, and the way that Thomas sees young Bruce in Dexter right from the beginning. That led us down the road of sort of exploring what it means. I think that's the thing about Robin with Batman in general, right? Is Robin is very representative of the hope and for the future that Batman has. The fact that he would bring a kid into this, because to make that he's making that kid's world better, hopefully. That's his idea. He's trying to make the world better for that next generation. So for this story about looking to the future and moving beyond your trauma and grief, it made sense to bring in an element of that hopeful Robin.
Wow. All right. So can we talk a little bit about Penguin's role in this new world? I mean, he's essentially Thomas Wayne's Alfred. How did that come about?
I wish I could tell you. In fact, people ask us all the time. They're like, well, who came up with that idea? And we honestly don't know. Like, because we just sit and we start, riffing and talking about stuff. And I have no idea whose idea it was. So I'm the only one here, so I'm going to take credit for everything. I came up with, no, I'm just kidding. Obviously, Oswald is important was already an important figure in Thomas's business life. And there was just something about putting him together with Dexter, putting them in the manner that I think it just happened organically. He started sort of taking on the role of the Alfred in this situation, a very distorted and strange version of Alfred, right? But the comic dynamic between Dexter and Oswald is something that I think really surprised us, and we really wanted to lean into once we found that it was there. Sometimes the voices just start revealing themselves, and the way that these characters relate to each other sort of reveals itself in the process. That's one of the great sort of discoveries we made.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we see in issue 3 that Superman is running around collecting heroes, or trying to. Looking at how things went with Flashpoint Batman. But is there the possibility of seeing a Flashpoint Justice League at some point?
Ooh, Are you pitching right now? Are you pitching something? Because if you want to talk after, we can talk after. I think obviously you see that we're looking toward the future, right? We're looking toward what is it going to mean if these heroes, or some of them are classically known as villains, if they all get together and form some kind of organization. It's important, especially in issue 3, to show that there is a larger world here, and that it could keep turning. I mean, Thomas thought when he worked with Barry in the Flashpoint series that he fixed it, that everything was done, but in fact, he's back here, right? So if this doesn't work, if he can't change it, this world is still going to keep going. And if this world keeps going, there are big threats out there, like the Kryptonians. There are things that are happening, and they're coming our way. And who is going to be able to deal with them? Who's going to be able to fight them? We've always seen justice leagues and justice societies arise in moments of great peril like that. So I think it's safe to say there's some kind of version of that in the future for this world, if this world continues. That's the question for Thomas.
All right. Well, I could talk to you about this all day, but it looks like we have time for one more. So what is one moment coming up in your series that you just cannot wait for fans to see?
Ooh, well, I mean, look, we are going to reveal the identity of the Clockwork Killer that is essential to the mystery of Flashpoint Beyond, and that's coming up in issue 4. And that reveal and that moment is really special, and I think the way Hermanico has depicted it visually is just a huge, exciting reveal and a beautiful moment. And I hope that it gets people excited for the next couple of issues.
All right. Well, this has been Dion Bickham reporting from San Diego Comic-Con 2022 with Tim Sheridan, one of the creators of Flashpoint Beyond, reporting for CBR. Thank you so much for tuning in.